The last thing I expected while sipping my Saturday morning coffee was a woman with a rhinestone-bedazzled visor and an HOA badge duct-taped to a clipboard slamming her fist on my Tesla hood and screaming, "Move this electric junk box now, or I'm calling the sheriff." I choked on my coffee not because of the threat, but because she had just unknowingly declared war on the state governor's private security convoy. Karen, yes, her name is actually Karen, had just tried to tow a disguised charging hub designed by Homeland Security for Motorcade refueling. I wasn't sure if I should laugh, cry, or just press the silent panic button in my pocket and watch the circus unfold. It had started a week ago when Karen first noticed my Tesla parked in the cul-de-sac for more than 24 hours. Most neighbors knew I worked in state-level infrastructure security, but Karen had just moved in 3 months ago and was hell-bent on turning our quiet neighborhood into a dictatorship disguised as a flower and fence utopia. She ran unopposed for HOA president because no one else wanted to touch that cursed title. Ever since then, she patrolled like she was auditioning for a reality show called Tyrants of the Gated. Her latest vendetta? My Tesla. Now, to be fair, the car was parked in a shared but perfectly legal space beside my driveway. I'd had it there for a few days because it was doing more than charging, it was serving as a covert recharge node. See, the state recently rolled out a new silent motorcade fleet, fully electric and designed to move without any detectable emissions or engine signatures. I'd been contracted to test a low-profile backup system, and they needed a place to trial run the suburban route. My Tesla was wired into a whole substation behind my garage, hidden beneath what looked like a regular flower bed. But to Karen, it was simply ruining the visual harmony of her morning yoga sessions. That Saturday, I was enjoying a rare quiet morning when I heard tires crunching angrily onto my driveway. I stepped out to find Karen, armed with her clipboard, a latte labeled Queen K, and a tape measure, pacing around my car like a health inspector about to condemn a sandwich. She whipped around the second she spotted me and said, "You have exactly 30 minutes to move this eyesore, or I'll escalate this to county officials." I was tempted to tell her that not only had county officials approved the setup, but state security personnel had personally supervised the installation, but I decided to wait. Something about the sheer confidence radiating from her over-moisturized face intrigued me. She wasn't just being rude, she was planning something. Sure enough, later that afternoon, I received an email titled Official HOA Violation. She cited several clauses from the HOA handbook, some real, some entirely fictional, and added a threat of fines, towing, and possible civil action. I laughed so hard I had to read it twice. She had copied and pasted paragraphs from a parking blog and tried to pass it off as policy. My neighbor Dave texted me a screenshot from the HOA Facebook page, where Karen had posted, "If the resident at 274 doesn't remove that hideous Tesla, I will be forced to take community action. That space belongs to all of us." What she didn't know was that Dave, retired Navy and full-time troll, was in on the setup. He replied, "That Tesla's probably the reason we still have power after that storm last week. You might be trying to tow your own generator." That night, I got a secure call from OPS 5, my contact with the Motorcade security team. "Heads up," he said, "Governor's team is planning a dry run through your area in 48 hours. Just keep the car in place and let us know if anyone starts poking around." "Funny you say that," I replied, "because Queen Karen is poking so hard she's about to trigger a constitutional event." He chuckled. "Well, if she escalates it, let us know. We'll handle it." Sunday morning, things went from funny to ridiculous. I woke up to the sound of a tow truck backing into the cul-de-sac. Karen stood beside it, triumphant, arms crossed, filming with her phone like she was uncovering Watergate. The tow truck driver looked confused, then alarmed when I walked out with a coffee mug and no expression. "Is this your car, sir?" he asked. "Yes," I said, sipping. "And if you touch it, you'll be violating several state-level security protocols." Karen jumped in. "He's bluffing. This is a residential area. He thinks he's above the law. I didn't respond. I reached into my pocket and tapped the silent panic button. It sent a ping to OPS 5, who was likely already nearby prepping for the Monday test run. Less than 4 minutes later, black SUVs rolled into the street with synchronized grace. Doors opened. Agents in suits and earpieces stepped out and moved with purpose. Karen turned white. One of the agents approached the tow truck driver and calmly said, "You're going to want to back away from that vehicle." Karen stepped forward. "Excuse me. I'm the president of the HOA. This is private property and that car is not authorized to be here." The agent, unbothered, replied, "Ma'am, that vehicle is a state-authorized recharge station under active surveillance. Interference is considered obstruction." Karen's mouth opened but no words came out. I leaned against the porch post, sipped my coffee, and said, "Would you like to repeat what you told me earlier about calling the sheriff?" She didn't. Instead, she staggered backward as the tow truck driver packed up and left faster than I thought possible. The agents didn't arrest her, but one of them pulled out a tablet and began taking note. Another handed me a small sealed envelope and nodded. Later that day, I opened it. Inside was a thank you letter from the governor's logistics team and a special permit allowing the Tesla to remain parked indefinitely under full legal protection. It also included a line that made me laugh out loud. Should any local enforcers challenge this status again, please direct them to the Office of Emergency Operations, preferably on camera. Karen didn't come out of her house for the rest of the day. But something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I should have known Karen wouldn't take that public humiliation lying down. If anything, the federal shutdown of her DIY towing operation only ignited her pettiness into a 5-alarm blaze. The next day, she came stomping through the neighborhood like a woman on a mission, still wearing the same visor, still gripping her clipboard like a holy relic, and now with an air of vengeful righteousness. Most people would have backed off after being told off by state agents in tailored suit. Not Karen. She doubled down, and this time, she brought backup. It started around noon. I was inside trying to enjoy a football game when I noticed 2 unfamiliar faces walking up and down the cul-de-sac. One of them wore a sun-faded security jacket with a patch that said, "Neighborhood Watch Enforcer," and the other looked like he just got off a monster truck rally shift. Karen trailed behind them, pointing at my Tesla with theatrical flair. I muted the TV and watched through the blinds as she gestured wildly, probably explaining how her constitutional rights had been violated by an electric vehicle. The 2 men nodded as if she were revealing state secrets. Something told me I needed popcorn. Sure enough, the guy in the security jacket strutted up to my door and knocked like he was about to issue a warrant. I opened it calmly, still holding the remote in one hand. "Afternoon," he said, voice deep and unnecessarily aggressive. "We've had reports of an unauthorized vehicle obstructing communal property." I gave him a look. "You mean my car?" "That would be correct. This is a shared zone, and per HOA regulations, we're conducting an enforcement review." Behind him, Karen nodded smugly. She had her phone out again, already recording. I leaned forward just enough for my voice to carry clearly and asked, "Are you a licensed enforcement officer?" The man shifted slightly. "I'm a retired deputy. I'm authorized by the HOA to conduct compliance checks." "Retired deputy?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "That patch says Neighborhood Watch." "It's a formality." I didn't say anything. I just stepped back, pulled out my phone, and pressed record. "Great. So what agency trained you?" "Because that vehicle you're trying to investigate is a registered component of a state-level emergency operations system. And interfering with it again could land you in federal court." The man didn't flinch immediately, but Karen did. She turned a shade paler and lowered her phone. "He's lying," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "He's bluffing again." "You were here yesterday," I said, turning to her. "You saw the agents. You heard what they said. Did you forget, Or are you just hoping your new muscle can't read? That hit a nerve. The guy in the jacket raised a hand like he was about to protest, but then I heard it, the low rumble of approaching vehicles. Not the screechy HOA golf carts or Karen's little hybrid SUV. No, these were the same matte black SUVs from before, smooth and silent, rolling into the street like ghosts on asphalt. This time there were more of them. Doors opened, agents stepped out, and one of them, a tall woman with mirrored sunglasses, walked straight up to me. "Mr. Carson," she said with a nod. "We received another alert. Are these individuals bothering the asset again?" I looked at Karen, whose mouth had fallen open in what could only be described as dumbstruck disbelief, and said, "Yeah. I think they're attempting another unauthorized enforcement action." "Understood," the agent said. She turned to the fake security guy. "Sir, please provide identification and any documentation authorizing you to act on behalf of a government or law enforcement agency." I don't need to," he stammered. "I'm just helping with compliance." "Compliance with what?" she asked. "With the HOA's regulations. You are not authorized to enforce municipal code," she said flatly. "And this is now the second documented instance of attempted interference with a protected vehicle under active operational use by the governor's office." Karen tried to jump in. "But this is our neighborhood. We have rules." The agent turned to her with the kind of slow, practiced patience usually reserved for disarming live explosive. "Ma'am, this vehicle is part of the state's critical infrastructure. Your previous actions have already been documented, and if this behavior continues, you may face obstruction charges. Do you understand?" Karen blinked rapidly. "You can't do that. I have rights." "You do," the agent said. "And you're about a foot away from violating someone else's." As if that wasn't enough, another agent approached holding a tablet. "We ran the badge ID for the security officer. There's no active law enforcement license. In fact, he's listed in an open warrant database in 3 counties for impersonating an officer." The silence that followed could have muted an air horn. The fake deputy turned pale, tried to stammer something, and then made a run for it, straight into the arms of another agent who had apparently seen enough action movies to predict that move. Karen gasped and actually staggered backward, dropping her phone. The agents didn't arrest her, not yet. Instead, one of them handed me a new notice. This time it was an upgraded clearance certificate, authorizing me to maintain the charging setup as an emergency logistics site for the entire county. As they left, one of the agents gave me a small smile and said, "We'll be back for the full dry run tomorrow. If she shows up again, just wave." Karen didn't say another word that day. In fact, she went back inside and closed every curtain in her house like someone expecting a siege. But the damage was done. Word had spread across the neighborhood. Dave posted a photo of the fake security guy getting tackled with the caption, "Karen's new boyfriend didn't make it past level 1 clearance." It got 87 likes in 2 hours. Later that evening, I saw Karen walking down the sidewalk holding a manila folder and muttering to herself. She was plotting something. You could feel it in the way she glared at every house, like she was calculating who had betrayed her. And she still didn't get it. This wasn't about an HOA rule anymore. This was about her insisting she was in control of something far, far above her jurisdiction. And something told me that whatever she had planned next was going to be even more desperate. Because when entitled people lose power, they don't let go quietly. They go down swinging, and usually straight into a viral disaster. Karen may have gone quiet for a day, but deep down, everyone in the neighborhood knew that silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The kind of brooding silence that builds just before a volcano explodes in glitter and legal threats. She had been embarrassed, publicly, repeatedly, and in front of men and women who wore suits that screamed, "I don't answer to your HOA." Most people would have retreated, maybe even apologized, but Karen? No. Karen went into full conspiracy mode. By Monday morning, her new mission was crystal clear. Discredit everything, starting with me. It began with a knock on my door. Not the angry, frantic kind Karen usually favored, but a soft, polite one, eerily polite. When I opened it, there stood a woman with a news station badge and a camera crew behind her. Her smile was camera-ready, teeth sparkling and eyes full of that morning show warmth that always precedes a trash segment dressed as community interest. She introduced herself as a reporter for a local channel and asked if I'd be willing to give a statement regarding an escalating feud between a concerned HOA president and a suspicious use of residential property. I stared at her, stunned. "You're talking about the Tesla?" I asked. She glanced back at her cameraman and nodded. "Yes, we've been told it's being used improperly, possibly even as a surveillance vehicle, and the community is alarmed." "Alarmed," I repeated slowly. She nodded again, professionally rehearsed, like she had already typed up half the segment and just needed a few sound bites to glue it together. That's when I spotted her producer standing off to the side, talking to, of course, Karen. She was in full glam mode, hair done up like she was headed to the Emmys and wearing an HOA sash that was somehow both real and self-made. Her hands flailed dramatically as she spoke, painting me as some kind of underground agent with a vendetta against suburban values. I took a deep breath and smiled at the reporter. "Give me 5 minutes." I didn't plan to do an interview. Instead, I made 2 quick calls. One to OPS 5, letting them know we had potential media coverage on site, and the second to my neighbor Dave, who was already on his porch laughing like a hyena. 5 minutes later, just as the reporter began setting up her camera, 2 more black SUVs turned into the cul-de-sac and parked directly in front of my house. This time, instead of agents in suits, out stepped the state's official press liaison, an older man with a calming presence and a voice made for shutting things down. He introduced himself to the news crew and politely requested that they refrain from filming until proper authorization had been reviewed. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a wasp. "Excuse me," she barked. "This is a free press event. I invited them. This is my neighborhood." The liaison turned to her with the kind of measured authority that could end conversations in 3 syllables. "Ma'am, this residence is temporarily classified under active state infrastructure protection. Media coverage is not permitted without coordination through the governor's office." Karen's face morphed through disbelief, rage, and something close to horror. "You mean he's not making it up?" she asked, pointing at me. The liaison raised one eyebrow. "We generally do not deploy armored motorcade resources for fictional purposes." It was glorious. The camera crew slowly packed up while the reporter quietly apologized and left. Karen, denied the platform she had so desperately scrambled for, stormed off with her sash flapping in the wind behind her like a broken kite. But she wasn't done. Later that night, I got a knock from another unexpected source: code enforcement. Not local police, not state agents, but the city's zoning office. The inspector looked uncomfortable, flipping through a clipboard filled with what had to be complaints. He asked to speak with me about possible violations relating to unauthorized electrical modifications, improper vehicle usage, and unapproved commercial activity. I invited him inside and showed him the permit. Not 1, not 2, but 6 documents, all signed and sealed, including the emergency infrastructure license that had been fast-tracked after the previous Karen incident. The inspector's eyes widened. "Where did these come from?" he asked. "The governor's office," I said. "You'll probably want to call before issuing any warnings." He did. And when he stepped outside to make that call, Karen, who had been lingering in her yard, marched over in a frenzy. "Don't let him intimidate you," she hissed at the inspector. "He's lying. He forged those papers, I know he did. There's no way someone with a Tesla and a smug attitude is working with the governor." The inspector didn't answer. He listened to the phone, nodded a few times, then hung up. "Everything is cleared," he said firmly. "There are no violations here. In fact, you should probably stop submitting reports unless you'd like to be investigated for harassment." Karen looked like her hair was about to combust. "This is a cover-up," she shouted. "This is a state-level conspiracy to hide his illegal infrastructure." The next day, it went viral. Someone had recorded Karen's outburst from across the street, complete with her screaming about government conspiracies, fake chargers, and something about solar mind control. The clip was uploaded to social media with the caption, "HOA Karen tries to take down a Tesla, finds out it's for the governor." Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, every corner of the internet latched onto it like vultures circling drama. Memes popped up instantly. One had her face photoshopped onto a cartoon villain holding a wrench with the words, "You'll never charge here again." Another showed the Tesla transforming into a robot labeled State Secrets Transporter. Karen tried to get the video taken down. She posted furiously online, threatening lawsuits, citing defamation, accusing the neighborhood of online bullying. It didn't help that the HOA board was now getting calls from reporters and angry residents wanting to know why their president was screaming about motorcade espionage. The board finally called an emergency meeting. It was closed to the public, but word spread fast. A day later, the board issued a statement. Karen had been suspended from her HOA duties pending a formal review. The message was short and polite, but the subtext was clear. She was an embarrassment. Several neighbors posted screenshots of the statement with celebratory comments, some offering to throw a "Karen is on hiatus" barbecue. Dave put up balloons. Despite her online tantrums, Karen didn't show her face much that week. She had gone from neighborhood tyrant to community laughingstock in the span of a few viral clips and one very well-placed charging station. But knowing her, she wasn't finished. She was licking her wounds, nursing her bruised ego, and probably plotting something even more unhinged. And if her next move was anything like her last, it was bound to be dramatic, stupid, and unforgettable. I just hope she didn't bring a marching band this time. Just when I thought Karen had finally accepted defeat, especially after being suspended from her self-proclaimed HOA throne, the woman found a new way to crash through rock bottom and dig deeper. She had gone dark online, disappeared from the HOA threads, and didn't show up for the next 2 board meetings. Most of us thought she'd skipped town or finally taken a long-overdue vacation. But no. Karen wasn't gone. She was waiting for the perfect moment to rise from the ashes and attempt one final, flaming act of neighborhood domination. And she chose the worst possible moment to do it. That moment arrived in the form of a surprise visit from the governor himself. It wasn't just a courtesy drop-in. The governor was in town for an infrastructure press event and decided to include a stop by the test site, the very one disguised as my Tesla. Apparently, my location had been selected as a model of innovation for the governor's Clean Power initiative. OPS 5 called me the night before and gave me a heads-up. There'd be a few cars, some reporters, a small press crew. Nothing major. Just a quick speech, a handshake photo, and then back to the State House. Except it wasn't nothing. By the time the motorcade rolled in that morning, the cul-de-sac looked like the opening scene of a political thriller. 3 black SUVs, a security sweep team, a half-dozen local officials, and enough camera equipment to make the neighbors think Spielberg had moved in. The governor stepped out of the vehicle looking relaxed and charming in that "I drink local coffee and save the planet" kind of way. He shook my hand, complimented the setup, and thanked me for my contributions to the state's green energy initiative. That's when it happened. Right in the middle of a brief Q&A with the press, as the governor explained how discrete charging infrastructure like mine would one day support emergency response vehicles, Karen emerged like a dramatic subplot. She stormed down the sidewalk in a flowing blouse and pearls, holding a folder stuffed with what looked like very serious papers. Her heels clicked like gunshots on concrete. One of the security staff tried to intercept her, but she waved her hands like she was casting a spell and shouted, "I am a resident of this neighborhood, and I demand to speak to the governor." The media turned. Cameras clicked. Every head swiveled. The governor raised an eyebrow and gestured for security to hold back. "Let's hear her out," he said with a grin that suggested he already knew this was going to be entertaining. Karen marched up, completely undeterred by the suits, the cameras, or the fact that she was interrupting a sitting governor. She launched into a full-scale tirade about improper use of residential space, illegal modifications, and how this entire setup was a fraudulent misuse of taxpayer dollars. She waved her folder like it contained the secrets to Area 51. The governor let her finish. Then, with the smooth delivery of a seasoned politician who's dealt with dozens of Karens before, he simply asked, "And what exactly is your role in all of this, ma'am?" Karen puffed up. "I'm the HOA president." There was a beat of silence. A few awkward coughs. Then one of the board members, who'd been standing to the side, quietly stepped forward and said, "Former president. She was suspended last week." Karen's face turned crimson. The governor chuckled gently. "Well, thank you for your input. But I think our agencies have already cleared all the proper channels. And if there are any further concerns, I'm happy to have our legal team review them." Karen wasn't done. She jabbed her finger toward my Tesla. "That car is not a state vehicle. He's using this whole thing to boost his own ego. He made up the Motorcade. He called fake agents." Before I could say anything, one of the security officers pulled out a document case and handed it to the governor. He opened it, flipped to a page, and held it up for the cameras. It was my original authorization certificate, complete with state seal and multiple signatures. The governor read aloud, "This Tesla-based node is hereby designated as part of the Clean Power Emergency Support Grid and authorized under Executive Directive 29A. Then he looked at Karen and added, "So, no ma'am. It's not fake. It's literally on the books." The media lapped it up. You could practically hear the microphones salivating. Karen opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. She had finally hit a wall she couldn't argue with. Then came the final blow. The governor turned to me and said, "Would you mind if I took a quick photo next to the vehicle?" I smiled. "Of course, sir." As we posed for the cameras, with the Tesla gleaming in the background, Karen stood to the side, frozen in place. Someone from the press asked her to step out of the frame. She did so slowly, then stumbled away as the flashbulbs went off. The photo went viral within hours. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Governor praises Citizens Electric Support Station and Local Hero Helps Power Green Future." Karen? She became a footnote, a blurry figure in the background of a historic picture. But the story wasn't over yet. Because later that day, a package showed up on my doorstep. It was from the governor's office. Inside was a plaque engraved with the words, "For service to the state, clean power innovator." Beneath it was a small, subtle line that made me laugh out loud. "Inspired by local opposition. Powered by resilience." Karen saw the plaque later that evening when she walked past my driveway, eyes locked on the brass like it had personally insulted her. She said nothing. She just clenched her jaw and kept walking. The HOA board met again that weekend and, according to Dave, they made it official. Karen was permanently removed from any position of authority in the association. The motion passed unanimously, except for one abstention from her next-door neighbor, who simply didn't want to get involved. At the end of it all, the governor's visit had done more than validate my project. It had revealed the full scope of Karen's crusade and shut it down in front of the whole state. Her fantasy of restoring HOA order had been buried under a mountain of reality, and this time, there were cameras to prove it. As for me, I added the plaque to the base of the charging port, a quiet reminder that even in the face of manufactured outrage, the truth and a few thousand volts of clean energy would always win. I figured after the governor's visit, the viral video, the public humiliation, and the HOA's decision to officially strip Karen of her title, we'd seen the last of her. Most people would have retreated into obscurity, maybe changed zip codes or taken up silent yoga to recover from the public collapse of their suburban empire. But not Karen. She wasn't built for humility. She was built for denial, deflection, and one last catastrophic tantrum. I didn't know when it would come, but I knew it would. And when it did, it was every bit as unhinged as I feared. It started subtly. The HOA sent out an updated rulebook. Normally these are dry, stapled packets no one reads beyond the bolded fines, but this one had a new clause at the very bottom, one that instantly caught my attention. It read, Clause 14b, in accordance with local and state cooperation guidelines, any permanent or semi-permanent structures built on shared neighborhood property without direct board approval may be subject to re-evaluation. It didn't name me, but it might as well have said, "This is about your Tesla, buddy." I wasn't worried. The governor's team had made the legal status ironclad, and the neighborhood land had been reviewed and approved months ago. But the timing felt too precise, too bitter. It didn't take long to confirm what I already suspected. Karen had submitted a revised petition for HOA amendment under her husband's name. He technically still owned a condo in the community, even though he lived 2 counties over and only showed up when the lawn company messed up his lemon tree. That was Karen's last card, using a loophole to push HOA policy from the sidelines. And it might have worked, except she made the mistake of mailing flyers to every resident titled, "The Tesla Menace, What They're Not Telling You." It was printed in red ink with conspiracy-grade fonts and included screenshots from security cameras, illegally taken, rambling bullet points about radiation, and a laughably photoshopped image of me shaking hands with an alien in front of my garage. Dave got his copy and immediately posted it online. Within hours, the flyer became meme fodder. My favorite version had the title changed to Area 274. The Electric Awakens with a sci-fi soundtrack and motion graphic. Karen's attempt to reclaim her authority had backfired spectacularly. Again. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling she had something else up her sleeve. And I was right. Because 2 days later, a realtor's van showed up outside her house. Not to sell. To evict. That was the twist none of us saw coming. Apparently, Karen didn't actually own her house. It was in her daughter's name. A fact she had never shared with anyone, probably because it undermined the whole HOA queen persona. But her daughter, who'd been quiet and reclusive ever since Karen moved in, had apparently had enough. She'd served her mother with an eviction notice for harassment, defamation, and unauthorized use of the property for personal legal crusade. The agents were there to enforce it. It was surreal. Watching Karen argue with the movers while they boxed up her collection of lawn gnome security cams and inspirational plaques about assertiveness was something no one had expected to witness. She kept pointing to her porch as if it gave her constitutional rights. I watched from my driveway, trying not to laugh, while the Tesla, still humming with quiet, state-sanctioned purpose, remained exactly where it was. As the moving crew loaded her final boxes, I approached one of the guys and asked, "How's it going?" He smirked. "Lady said we weren't allowed to step on her bricks because she installed them herself." I nodded. "Sounds about right." Karen spotted me and walked over, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice was strained but determined. "You think you won, don't you?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Karen, this was never a competition. You just made it one. You brought the governor into my neighborhood." "I didn't bring him," I said. "He came because the work mattered. You just happened to be standing in the way." She glared at me like she was waiting for me to say something cruel. But I didn't. I just turned and walked back to my porch, coffee in hand, and watched as she got in her car, now packed to the ceiling with plastic binders, monogrammed towels, and a decorative sign that read "Good Vibes Only." The irony almost knocked me over. With Karen gone, things settled. The neighborhood relaxed. People started waving at each other again. The HOA board reopened meetings with actual agendas instead of vendettas. My Tesla continued operating as part of the state's grid project, and with the governor's backing, it had become a quiet symbol of progress instead of a battleground. The charging station got a formal plaque installed, right at the base, engraved in steel. It read, Community Power Station, in partnership with the Office of the Governor, Site 274. And underneath, in smaller print, dedicated to resilience, innovation, and the lessons we learn from adversity. It didn't mention Karen, but she was in every story told about it. Then one final surprise arrived. A week after she left, a package was delivered to my door. No return address, just a padded envelope with my name written in handwriting that looked like it had been angry for decades. Inside was a note. Just one line. You'll never understand what this place meant to me. Underneath it was a laminated copy of her first HOA election flyer, framed in cheap acrylic. I stared at it for a moment, then chuckled and slid it into the drawer next to my permit. A relic. A reminder. Later that month, the governor's office invited me to speak on a local panel about clean energy in suburban environments. They called it Powering Progress. Real people, real solutions. I talked about tech, infrastructure, the importance of integration, but I also told a story. About a neighbor. About control. About what happens when people confuse rules for righteousness and forget the value of listening before yelling. The crowd laughed. They applauded. And afterward someone came up and said, "You really lived through all that?" I nodded. Every last what of it. And somewhere out there, I like to believe Karen is still writing up another complaint letter. This time to the universe itself. But for once there's no HOA, no clipboard, no sheriff, and no one left to listen but the echo of her own voice bouncing around the walls of a new neighborhood she doesn't control.